start, that we should aim for the wicket and not the batsman, but I'm afraid one or two of my balls will veer towards the batsman. I think, like in cricket, he will be well protected, and maybe like Steve Collins, he'll recover after 45 minutes. I'd like to start by quoting Tony Quinn himself, and it's the mantra that we heard here when Father Hughes was speaking. He says, if you want something, believe that you have it without any inner doubt, and it'll come about. Now, during our investigation into him, I became so obsessed with Tony Quinn, and I spoke about him for so long that my work colleagues actually took this phrase, wrote it on a sheet of paper with a picture of Tony Quinn above it, and stuck it on my desk. It's his number one mantra, and it's also the key way of understanding Tony Quinn. He's a self-proclaimed lifestyle guru, and he's built up a complicated image of himself as someone who's made groundbreaking discoveries. In fact, they're so groundbreaking that you can't really understand them, you merely must accept them and accept Tony Quinn. In fact, nothing can be further from the truth. Tony Quinn, like his mantra, is simple to understand and see through, in the same way his childish theories are, providing you have enough information at your disposal into what he does. When he was a young boy, he wanted to be a magician. He told his mother that he wanted to do great things for the world, but somewhere along the line he changed his mind. Tony Quinn decided he wanted money, and he came up with a plan to get it. His plan was not sophisticated. He merely combined a scientifically dodgy philosophy with a working knowledge of hypnosis, and used both to get as much money from people as he could. Before I go on, I would like to explain why we started to investigate Tony Quinn, and take you through some of the things we discovered about his organisation. He once said that he was a Dublin fellow who comes from Ireland, is a bit of a peasant, a bit of a thicko, says silly things, does silly things, and has these childish hobbies where he believes that he must be faithful to his heroes. He is now a multi-millionaire living in the Bahamas, and this is why he came to our attention, and this is why he has come to lots of attention from the media. The first I'd ever heard of Tony Quinn was through his involvement with Stephen Collins, the boxer. I didn't take much notice of him at this time, however I later made the connection between the Tony Quinn health guru I saw speaking on the television and the Tony Quinn that peered out from his newspaper, which used to get delivered to my house near UCD where I was in college. Dr. Tony Quinn, it always said. Doctor of Clinical Hypnotherapy, Master of Science in Psychotherapy. It was called Blueprint for Successful Living, and it promised only good news. There was always at least 30 photographs of people with chorus-line smiles, and there was always an extraordinary interview with Quinn himself. He is not a modest person. In many ways, he would say in interviews, I see myself as a philosopher. I spent so much time trying to learn the secrets of life that I began to have insights. The newspaper said Quinn was always involved in some groundbreaking research, and was always full of details of his magic formulas, said to be able to cure a myriad of illnesses. I remember coming home after a few pints in the students' bar with my friends, sitting down, taking out Blueprint for Successful Living, and having a good laugh at it. How could anyone get bought into this organisation? What I didn't know then, was that there are lots of people, perfectly normal people, whose circumstances are different to mine, and were different to mine at the time, who were attracted to Quinn's cure-alls and his organisation's promises. I also didn't know at the time about Quinn's sunny seminars. These were never advertised in the newspapers, and later when I learned of them I thought it was strange that they were left out. Why neglect to advertise your best product, the one thing that allowed you to go from a Dublin thicko, as he says he was himself, to living in the tax haven of the Bahamas? Why leave out your educoseminars? When my colleague Harry McGee, I realised that not only was Quinn running these events, but that he was charging £15,000 a person a pop, we decided to find out why they were costing so much. What was it about Quinn that meant people were going to spend the price of a car on his teachings, and were they worth it? Sometime between the late 1980s and early 1990s, Tony Quinn, former apprentice butcher, former bodybuilder and former yoga guru, reinvented himself. He armed himself with his doctorate and later his master's, and he devised the educosystem, which he described as me-mind technology. His connection with Steve Collins when he became world champion gave the educosystem a huge boost, and the connection did Quinn no harm. In the years after his by now famous Late Show debut, Quinn's courses mushroomed from short local seminars to 2-week courses in exotic climes run on an almost monthly basis. In the same period, he built up a following. What we know now was thousands of supporters, some of whom still believed him to be the world's best life coach. An estimated 600 of these, some sources say many more, have gone on these £15,000 seminars. Some people estimate that Tony Quinn makes £1 million a month from the seminars. And these people went because Quinn promised to dramatically change their lives using his unconscious attention systems. Some people attended seminars that cost £50,000. Other people went the whole hog, the one-on-one with Quinn, for £100,000. The investigation we carried out, however, showed that there was more to the Quinn organisation and his seminars than meets the eye. Rather than being an organisation designed to help people, it is in fact a clever business empire whose main aim is financial gain, and most of the money goes to Quinn. The success promised by Quinn never seems to be delivered to most of the people involved, and if it does, you could never prove it had anything to do with Quinn philosophy. In Quinn's organisation, hard sell techniques that push the concept of other people's monies to its limits are used. Extraordinary sell-on procedures are in place to increase recruitment, and Quinn uses his influence over people to make them believe that they have to sell his courses to others, something no hypnotist practicing under current guidelines could ever do. The Sunday Tribune for the first time secured tapes of what is said at these seminars and found them to be sold on an extremely hard sell basis. There was evidence that Quinn tells people, while under his influence at the seminars, that the best way for them to realise their life of their dreams is to sell his seminars to others. So the way you get the success, the dream you want, is to get someone else to go on Quinn's course for £15,000. There was no evidence that whether or not you had. There was also evidence that whether or not you had the finance to attend, Quinn's organisation could point you in the direction of someone who could lend you the money. The main aim was to get the money and get you to spend it on going on the seminar. Money, in fact, is one of the recurrent themes of all Tony Quinn's seminars. He tells people that they can get the sports car, the holiday, those riches and the successful life he has and that they dream about. Imagine the following ideal scenario, he said on one of the tapes. You have left your penthouse on Paradise Island and you are in your yacht on the bay. You are sitting with a group of friends and they are envying your lifestyle. They ask how you achieved it. You talk about the seminar, how you went from fixed to flow and self-expression, of the exciting adventures you are having since living outside of thought. In another tape recorded at one of the seminars, Quinn puts his audience in a relaxed state, tells those attending, he tells them to picture an exotic island with a cave in the middle. He then tells them to go into the cave where they find jewels and riches, and he tells them to run their hands through the jewels. He makes it sound like it is that easy to get the success he promises. Listeners to the tape can hear hysterical calling out, loud laughter and shouts of joy from those at the seminar, and they are clearly under Quinn's influence. Go inside now and see this incredible treasure, he tells them. Wow, look at all that treasure. Look at all those gold bars. Aren't they beautiful? See all those jewels. Run over there and run your hand through all those jewels. Not everyone who attends Quinn's seminars can easily afford £15,000. I wouldn't be able to afford it. I don't know about you here, but I don't think a lot of people would be able to afford £15,000. It's the price of a car. Representatives of the organisation in an interview with us said, though, that it was often the case that people are advised to borrow money for one of Tony Quinn's seminars, and they readily admitted that they can point people in the direction of specific money lenders that have a working knowledge of Quinn's system. Some would say are friends of the organisation. Some of those encouraged to go on Quinn's seminars told us that the enthusiasm shown by Quinn's supporters made them feel compelled to attend even if they couldn't afford to. One woman, she contacted us from the Loch area in Cork. She told us she was advised to remortgage her house to find £15,000 seminar fee. Other members of the Tony Quinn staff said they've also come across hard sell techniques. So they said that other members of the organisation aggressively market the seminars and would go out of their way to convince others to go on them. Two people to whom we spoke to severed all connections with the organisation soon after the £15,000 seminars became introduced. They were uneasy about the manner in which they were being promoted. During this investigation, we built up a relationship with an employee of Quinn's at one of his health shops. The woman heavily promoted the seminars when the subject was raised and suggested that we borrow from a bank or credit union to finance our attendance. She told us to lie to the bank and tell them that we wanted the money for a car or a holiday and not to say that we wanted it for a Tony Quinn conference. She said we'd make the money back easily. The Tony Quinn organisation says that they tell people to encourage other people about the seminars and to do it very enthusiastically. There is a financial incentive involved as well. And this has been confirmed by Tony Quinn's own organisation who we spoke to at the time. We learned that a person who has attended a seminar is urged to get others to attend subsequent ones. If a new customer signs up for a £50,000 seminar, the person who made the introduction gets £1,000, and if the newcomer then introduces another one, the original agent gets £2,000. The agent, however, must commit to going to at least one Quinn seminar a year. So therefore you have to spend £15,000 a year as you are earning this money. This system, it reveals the emphasis put on sales technique and encouraging people to sell the seminars. However, it only gives a small indication of the out-and-out hard sell spin Quinn has used in at least one of the seminars that we have got evidence of. In the tape mentioned at the beginning, as I said already, the people, it is apparent, are in a relaxed state and are under Quinn's influence. There are hysterical sounds from the crowd. Quinn at the beginning makes them concentrate on relaxing. When they relax, he then sets about explaining what he calls the selling technique that never fails. He tries to convince those present that the only way they can live the full life of their dreams is to sell his seminars to other people. Hypnotherapists who have listened to the tape for us have said the people are in an altered state, and that Quinn is guiding them into some sort of delusional place because he absolutely leaves out any possibility of failure or possibility of negativity. Spokespeople for Quinn have denied that negativity and the possibility of failure were excluded from the seminars. They told us that all Quinn does is stack the odds in people's favours. They also said that the people on the tape may have requested the seminar. It should, however, be noted that during these seminars, Quinn refers to opposition and negative thoughts. He tells those attending to block out all opposition and negative thinking and not to allow them stop them in their mission to sell his seminars to get the life of their dreams. When he was a teenager, Tony Quinn idolised Charles Atlas, the puny kid who overcame getting sand kicked in his face to become Mr. Universe. Quinn has often boasted throughout his life that he had, at one stage, the exact same dimensions as Atlas in terms of his physical stature. And he's also boasted that he has won about 12 bodybuilding contests in total, including Mr. Ireland. If you flick through Blueprint, you quickly notice an almost obsessive interest with the body beautiful and the ageing process. The most extreme example of this is Bob Del Monte, an 81-year-old man with a bodybuilder's body. The second obsession seems to be with Quinn himself, and I will touch again on this later. His smiling image is pervasive, and he is always interviewed in the magazine. His name crops up more often than a Murphy in Cork. Have you ever been interested in cracking the system, he says in one of his classic interviews? Cracking it so you can live outside of it on your own terms. My whole life, he says, this has interested me at all levels. I have always described it as the rat in the rat race that stops and sits looking for a hole in the wall. He's looking for the hole through which to escape, but at first there's only the solid wall. So he just sits there, looking. Then one day the hole just appears and the rat is free. I don't know about you, but I find it extremely difficult to take Quinn seriously when he talks like this. A number of experts, who I will also come to later, agree. The reason we investigated Quinn, apart from that, though, is that there are some people who, for some reason or another, obviously do believe, or did believe him when he says things like this. Many of those contacted us in the run-up to our investigation and during it, and spoke about their involvement in Quinn's organisation. A number of people said that their involvement was less than enjoyable. Well, it can be shown that their families suffered terribly while they believed wholeheartedly in what Quinn said and spent a fortune, money they did not have to spend, on Quinn's seminars, only to be eventually rejected from the organisation because they were not successful enough for Quinn. There are, of course, people who said they benefited from Quinn's seminars. Some say he shares similarities to Jesus. Other people describe him as a genius. One of his closest associates, Colette Millie, who took part in the hypnosis operations, told this newspaper that he's a genius whose achievements, like others who have gone before them, will not be fully recognised in his own lifetime. Whatever way they see him, one thing is certainly true. Most of Quinn's followers are extremely loyal to him, and it is very difficult to change their minds. However, the similarities and the problems described by families of those who have been adversely affected by Quinn's organisations are jarring and show that at the very least there are grounds for serious concerns over the manner in which it operates. I have no doubt that you'll hear from more of these people today, but I would still like to take you through just some of the things they told us during our investigation. We spoke to people whose relationships have been fractured, people who have been distanced from their families because of their involvement with Tony Quinn, and we spoke to people who are opposed to what Quinn is doing. A number of former followers we tracked down told us that they were disillusioned with the organisation's relentless pursuit of profit. Very few people are prepared to speak out against Quinn. There is a tremendous amount of fear. Those who do will generally ask for their identity to be protected. Some do not want Quinn organisations to know they have a problem with it, and others do not want their relatives who are involved in the organisation to know that they are opposed to what they are doing. We spoke to some people, though, one that we will call Paul and one that we will call Anne. Paul's wife has been involved in the Tony Quinn organisation for 10 years. The last 4 have been very problematic, and his marriage broke up as a result. He said she initially became involved in Tony Quinn's gym and his exercise and healthy eating plans. However, his concern developed over the years when he came to understand more about Quinn's life system, and her involvement increased. At one stage, his wife, without discussing with him, decided to leave her job to go to work for the Tony Quinn organisation. The move entailed a 50% drop in salary. He said from this point on, his wife changed dramatically and became totally dependent on all Tony Quinn things. It got to a stage, he said, where she would get up in the morning and take 6 or 7 Tony Quinn supplements, listen to Tony Quinn tapes throughout the day, wear Tony Quinn t-shirts and use Tony Quinn shampoo. She would keep turning off the news because she'd been told not to listen to negative information. Eventually, he asked her to make a choice, to take a break from Tony Quinn or risk ending the marriage. She said she would rather end the marriage than take a break. Anne's husband was a healthy businessman who attended one of the £100,000 one-on-one courses with Quinn. She'd never heard of Quinn, but since her husband went on the seminar, she's been fighting to prevent other members of her family being recruited to the Quinn system. She said that when her husband returned from the seminar, he was very much unrecognisable from the man she married. She said he seemed not to have control over his own mind. As well as Paul Mann, the Sunday Tribune also spoke to 6 other families, all of whom had similar stories to tell. One mother said her daughter changed for the worse after she went on a seminar, and the problems this caused have devastated her family. Another woman from a farming background said her husband had recently received a large amount of money in compensation, and that he spent £15,000 of it to go on a course to Egypt. Her family is distraught about the changes they've seen in him since he is gone, and she said her marriage is now destroyed. Representatives of the Tony Quinn organisation responded to us at the time. Martin Ford and Colette Malee told us that the incidents in question were unfortunate, but denied the Quinn system was to blame. They told us that marriage breakups were part of life and that their courses have been attended by numerous couples who have stayed together. Ford said they expect from the training people receive that changes will take place in their lives, and he said he was sorry to hear that some families had bad experiences. He said there was at least 50 examples where one member of a marriage has sent the other out on seminars. They put us in contact with a number of people, all of whom spoke in the exact same way about how they had benefited from Tony Quinn's system, and it is this system that I'm going to shortly put under the microscope. To finish this section though, I would like to say that all the evidence we have built up during our investigation is that Quinn's organisation sets out to deliberately create a distance between its members and the families of those members. They do not like it when someone outside their control, such as a partner, becomes involved in trying to find out why it is that their relative is so involved in the organisation. As we heard already, the system that is central to Tony Quinn's philosophy and his organisation is called the educosystem. We examined it by asking a number of leading Irish experts what they thought of it and whether or not it could be proven by science, something conventional medical treatments and systems have to be before they can be used on the general public in any way. For most of his life, Quinn said he had researched the mind. Somewhere along the way, out of nowhere, Educo was born. He set out his stall for the system in an extraordinary 1993 tape, which to us was a mismatch of metaphors and insight. It spends almost 2 hours explaining his new mind technology. The formula that underlies Quinn's system is set out in that mantra that we explained at the beginning. If you want something, believe that you have it without any other doubt, and it will come about. He repeats one piece of research ad nauseum all the time, and that is that we use less than 10% of our minds. He claims he can tap into our unconscious. Likening the mind to a computer, he says that if we step outside our true selves, which have been ruined by thought programs, and step outside our thoughts, which he calls anti-life programs, that we can begin to install new programs. Usually, however, these are the ones that he provides. If you can get your whole mind to accept a goal, he says, then you will come about effortlessly. You get into a state of unconscious attention, where everything is effortless, and you can be 100 times more aware than ever before. You can then photograph your goal or install a new program, which Quinn frequently expresses in terms of riches and material success, and you'll instinctively follow that goal like a heat-seeking missile. The first person we asked about this system was Professor Kieran Benson. He's one of Ireland's leading academic psychologists, and he's the head of the psychology department in University College Dublin. We showed Professor Benson the full details of Quinn's breakthrough system, and he came back to us with this very quickly. He said he found Quinn's system simplistic in the extreme and without any acceptable research. He said that if Quinn was persuasive with some types of people, it is a persuasiveness which seems to be based on identifying these people's needs and distresses rather than any scientific or theoretical understanding of contemporary human psychology. He said Quinn purports to give people an understanding that he's developed on the basis of research that he's been conducting for most of his adult life. But he said that nothing of what he read of Quinn showed anything other than the most banal and superficial understanding of psychology or of other human beings. He describes Quinn's theories as primitive, and said his metaphors, such as thought programs, were crude and very misleading. He said they obscured more than they revealed. We also showed Quinn's system and the evidence he used to justify it to Professor Ian Robertson. Professor Robertson is head of the psychology department and the director of the Trinity College Institute of Neuroscience. Both he and Benson said that some of the psychological propositions and research that Quinn used simply do not stand up to scientific scrutiny. Robertson went on to answer specific questions that were put to him about the brain without knowledge of or reference to Quinn's own system. To the notion that humans use less than 10% of their minds, something Quinn says over and over again, he said that this had no scientific foundation. There are no areas of brain tissue that are lying dormant, waiting to be awakened. Asked about research that Quinn claims shows the unconscious to be a site of a far larger portion of mental life than Freud ever envisaged, Robertson said that this proposition could not be substantiated. We showed him a copy of Blueprint for Living, and we showed him how Quinn says that he can help people become 2 or 3 times more aware than they are normally. He said this was ridiculous. To claim such a thing showed a profound ignorance about the use of numbers in psychological research and represented an attempt to deliberately mislead. So there it is, 2 leading experts, top of their respective fields in the country, and both find it simple to dismiss Quinn's central theories and philosophies. His system cannot be proven by science, so whether or not it is what it says it is, whether or not it actually works, cannot be shown. A look at Quinn's systems and theories would not be complete, however, without an examination of a true gem, a true money spinner, his postal requests. Apart from his educo system, Quinn operates the above-mentioned extremely profitable postal request system, and it's linked to the unprovable educo system. His literature says that the educo system can be used to obtain results in every aspect of a person's life, from business, health, healing, success for the self, and life improvement. It can even be used to achieve results for people who are not aware that they are the subject of a request. The postal requests, of course, have to be accompanied by a cheque for £25 or £40 for a family, and you have to renew them monthly to get them to work. Quinn invites people to write down their goals and to send them in with a photograph. Alternatively, you can ring them in. He and a long-time Quinn associate, Aideen Cowman, promised to apply their minds for the desired outcome. This is how he says it works. When I put my hands together, and I really believe wholeheartedly in truth, effortlessly expecting a result, I notice that a feeling of energy comes from inside me, runs down my hands and into the request. I really do feel like that magician, pouring the magic energy into those requests. Asked could the human mind work in such an extraordinary telepathic capacity, Professor Robertson simply replied, no. Despite all the evidence showing that Quinn's theories are difficult to substantiate, Martin Ford, Quinn's associate, told us that Tony Quinn stands over everything he says and that he is in a position to back it up. He said the same thing to us about Tony Quinn's educational qualifications, another area around which there are serious questions to be answered. The walls of Tony Quinn's mansion at Martello Tower in Malahide are festooned with framed certificates of the myriad qualifications that he says he has. It is understood that he claims he has something in the region of 18 in all. Many are diplomas for practices that would be considered to be beyond the fringes of conventional health studies. Neurolinguistic programming and hypnotism are 2. However, 2 degrees in particular are always used by Quinn to validate his self-styled new mind technology programs. He uses these to justify the £15,000 price tag that he charges for his seminars. He styles himself as Dr. Tony Quinn. The doctor part comes from him being a doctor of clinical hypnotherapy, and we were told from the Quinn organisation this distinction was conferred by the American Institute of Hypnotherapy. This college is based in Santa Ana, California. The college, we discovered, awarded most of its degrees by distance learning at the time Quinn received his qualification. Nowadays, if you access its website, you're referred to the American Pacific University in Hawaii. When we contacted the American Institute of Hypnotherapy, it said it was not actively encouraging any new students, but would be offering doctor in clinical hypnotherapy and PhD degrees by distance learning. An employee told us that the PhD could be done in 2 years by correspondence. We then contacted a Dr. John Baer. He's based in California, and he's the leading authority in the US on non-traditional education. He wrote a guide to non-traditional colleges, and it's in its 13th edition and has become the standard work. He has also given expert evidence on behalf of the FBI in cases involving unaccredited colleges and qualifications. In the 10th edition, he described the American Institute of Hypnotherapy as offering doctorates in hypnotherapy entirely through correspondence study, and that students are encouraged to finish their PhD in less than 1 year. He said the college was authorised to grant degrees by the state of California. We tracked down the college's prospectus, and in the early 1990s it said that because continuity of learning was important, students were encouraged to complete their doctorate in a year or less. The fee was $3,300. John Baer told us that state approval did not mean that a college was accredited. Approval is regulated by the Office of Consumer Protection in California. However, accreditation means recognition of the degree as a doctorate by an agency approved by the Department of Education. Baer told us that the AH was not accredited by any agency recognised by the US Department of Education. The other qualification that Quinn proudly advertises is a standard Masters of Science degree from the University of East London. He was awarded this in 1995, and funny enough, he claims it was a Masters in Science in Clinical Psychotherapy. We checked with the university. They said the Masters was awarded in cases of independent study. We were able to confirm that Quinn's thesis was entitled An Investigation into the Hypnotic Effects of Hypnotic Communication on the Individual's Subjective Experience of Pain. The research involved what we've heard already, the hypnosis of 4 patients undergoing elective and minor surgery, which later appeared in the Late Show. On that occasion, and ever since, Quinn has made extraordinary claims about this research that he has done and his qualification. In one of his latest blueprints, he had this to say: "Working with a university, I discovered what has now become known as unconscious attention. For this, I received a Master of Science degree, the highest award to date for original research in the area of how to use more of your brain and mind. Unconscious attention proved to be the breakthrough and has since played the key role in all of my work." A spokesman for the university said it would be impossible to comment on his claims without revisiting his thesis. She pointed out that the claims were stated in a passive voice, and she said that they seemed to be his own interpretation of the significance of the degree he had received. There is no reference to unconscious attention in the thesis title that Quinn has produced. Martin Ford, Quinn's associate, explained that for academic reasons the title of the thesis was confined to hypnosis. However, there was still some confusion as to what Quinn's research had actually involved. He had stated more than once that the operations were part of the research for the Masters. However, Ford told us that the operations formed part of research work undertaken after Quinn had completed his Masters. Quinn also claimed in his blueprint newspapers that he continued to work with a university on groundbreaking research, which is causing quite a stir in scientific circles. In one study, he consistently quotes sales revenue increased by 70% in a company when sales staff used unconscious attention. The results were monitored by Price Waterhouse, who's since said that they didn't monitor the results. However, the company which achieved this amazing result was in fact Quinn's own health stores selling Quinn's own health products. This is hardly what we would call objective research. It can be seen from this that there's a great amount of confusion about Quinn's 2 main qualifications. And in the latter case, the groundbreaking research and the cases he makes in the back of it are not easily verifiable, not least among the staff at the university he was supposed to have worked closely with. Incidentally, the use of hypnosis in surgical procedures is nothing new. It was used extensively until it was superseded by anaesthetics and has been used in Ireland by doctors on an ongoing basis. So now that we've looked at all aspects of Tony Quinn's organisation, the man himself, his education, his background and his theories, there's one question that still remains: is he running a cult? When we worked on our investigation into Quinn, we kept finding ourselves asking this question: as a cult. The more you look at the workings of Quinn's organisations, the more they begin to resemble those of the cult. And the more you delve into how he managed to build it into what it is today, the more similarities emerge. It is clear that Quinn himself has grappled with the issue. In an extraordinary tape never publicly revealed before, but a transcript of which was obtained by us, he told those attending a seminar in 1994 about how he saw himself, and in the process he posed a central question. "You might say," he said, "am I trying to start a cult? Am I trying to be a leader of something? I don't know. But if you're suspicious about me, the beauty of it is that you're totally safe and you won't line up with me anyway." Ever since he asked this question, it is one we have tried to answer. Certainly the aspects of Quinn's organisation which share similarities with a cult are its strong figurehead, the elimination of opposing thought, the unswerving loyalty of enthusiasts to Quinn, and the view that those who criticise Quinn do not fully understand and their objections should be discarded. Spokespeople for Quinn's organisations deny that it is a cult. They point out that it is a business offering a service which people can take or leave. They say that Quinn's image is used to promote products and services that he originated, and that they say they use the word organisation merely as a term and that it doesn't have any connotations. Quinn's detractors believe, however, that he has a strong messianic streak and that his personality dominates the lives of some of those who subscribe to the Educo system. The 1994 seminar put forward a philosophy that needs those who adhere to submit themselves totally to Quinn and align themselves to the force that Quinn claimed exists within inside him. The seminar is littered with religious metaphors, and he concludes that only submission to himself works. If you were to relate to me, he tells them, by that I mean give all your resistance, give up all your ideas that are in the way and align yourself to me, then I can bring out the self and put in a program that you and I believe is best for you and give you a perfect life. Later he told his followers that in his reactions with these people he saw something in them which he believed was their force. He recognized it as their force, and they instantly, quite frankly, would do anything for him. There was no problem. Quinn refers to himself all the time in terms of being a leader of some kind of movement. He says he is aligned to the internal force which he has discovered. He once said, I think that in some way I am meant to work with a large group of people. It could be millions. Quite possibly what he meant there was I'm meant to earn millions. He spoke in the tape of how the force has made me into a healer, capable of making others into healers. If I can line up enough people with me and keep it pure, I can change the world, he promised. His spokesman, Martin Ford, told us that Quinn's message and methods were part of his educo system. He said that Quinn didn't claim to have a messianic role within the organisation. However, it was clear that Quinn was claiming this, and that he had a greater role for himself than the mere jawboning of business gurus who goad you to even greater selling techniques. He once said, this brings me back to whether I would see myself as some type of leader. There I would say that my answer is yes. I have always felt that in some way I would be involved in great change in the world. In 1972, when he was bringing yoga to the masses, Quinn had already assembled a loyal core of followers. Some of them remain faithful to him today. He set up communes in suburban homes in Kilbarrack and Holt, and people could step outside ordinary existence and experience yogic states of being, the different states of existence, past lives, auras and karmas. Two people who were heavily involved in Quinn in those early days said that there was a messianic aspect to him, that some people believed he was a reincarnation of Jesus. And certainly it is clear that he spawned a loyalty that bordered on devotion among his followers. Quinn enthusiasts nowadays often drive Japanese sports cars. They drive Japanese sports cars because Tony Quinn likes Japanese sports cars. They work out in the gym and they put a huge emphasis on the body beautiful because Quinn is a bodybuilding enthusiast. They use the full range of Quinn food supplements and vitamins because they are made by Tony Quinn. There is also a certain type of look among Tony Quinn enthusiasts. One former employee described what she saw as the women in black phenomenon. Women who were involved with the organisation wore black clothes, a lot of makeup and short skirts. The loyalty has extended to being involved in many of his research breakthroughs, working under strict university conditions. 3 of the 4 patients who underwent operations without anaesthetic, one of the marketing bulwarks for educo and described as unremarkable by experts, were employees of Quinn. They included Colette Millie and Imelda Farrell, who run the Tony Quinn Health Centre in Cork. The research breakthroughs involving dramatic improvement in sales were achieved, as I said already, in Quinn's shop with Quinn employees. Some of the before and after pictures used to publicise his gyms and slimming products also used Quinn employees. As explained already, the Sunday Tribune has spoken to 6 people who were involved with the Quinn organisation, some for protracted periods. All spoke on the basis that anonymity be guaranteed, and all described Quinn as an enigmatic character with huge powers of persuasion and influence. Some attributed it to a form of psychic powers, others to an ability to relentlessly focus on people, others on his knowledge of hypnosis. Quinn himself describes this power as a force, an energy, a healing power. He said at one stage, I noticed that this force seemed to touch off some people and cause great changes in their lives. I used to find that people might literally fall down, and when they got up again they felt that they had an understanding, an awareness, an experience that was greater than anything that happened to them before, and it changed their lives. On his educo tape, he explains the effect that he has on people at his seminars. People, he said, speak of happiness, of euphoria, with their minds feeling crystal clear. People often talk about a brightness in their head, Some claim they get an increase in energy, that it feels like energy circulating to their body and going out to other people. The thrust of one of Quinn's 1994 seminars, which we also got access to, is of submission and obeying the force, lining yourselves up with him, with the force that emanates from him, and independent thinkers need not apply. Despite this, however, there is no shortage of newcomers prepared to align themselves to Quinn, as testified by the numbers attending his seminars. However, as explained already, some of the families of these people are concerned that the changes that have been affected, that have taken place in their relatives, have affected their relationships. These people, as I've shown, and some of them will go on no doubt to tell you today, that they firmly believe that Quinn's organisation has a cult-like draw on their families, which has caused a rift between them. A former associate told us that he spent most of his adult life with Tony Quinn and believed everything that he said. Tony Quinn was his entire life, but he found him to be obsessed with money, while very few others within the organisation made any real money at all. They were collecting huge amounts of money from the postal requests, the health products, the gym and the seminars, but very little of it was filtering down to the system. Nobody ever questioned Tony Quinn and asked him why they weren't driving the Japanese sports cars and why they hadn't new ones instead of second-hand ones. When I left, the shutters came down. I was excluded. You were either with Tony or you were completely out in the cold. That's what happened to me, and that's what he told us. Two other people spoke to us about how they became persona non grata within the organisation once they had left or were asked to leave. One expressed doubts about the necessity of selling seminars for £15,000 and was asked to leave shortly afterwards. Quinn, in his 1994 seminar, explicitly states that those with whom he works must align themselves to him, and the force by which he speaks about. To finish, I would like to report on what's happened since our investigation. We believe that the publicity surrounding the issue at the time convinced a number of people who were considering getting involved in the organisation not to. We believe that a number of people who were involved have now stopped being so and have moved away from Quinn's organisation. We believe, however, that there are still a good number of people who are becoming involved and who aren't aware of the full story, the full facts and the full picture of the Tony Quinn organisation. We are now in the process of trying to get someone to do something about Tony Quinn. We have tried to get government departments and state agencies involved in the matter, but we've been unable to. Tony Quinn is a hypnotist. He advertises in Ireland. Most of his customers and clients are Irish. His money comes from Ireland, and he practices mainly on Irish people. Surely, like any medical doctor who works with Irish patients, and like any psychiatrist who deals with a patient's mental illness, he should be subject to some kind of regulation, and his methods and practices should be monitored. We understand that the Irish Medicines Board is looking at a number of Quinn's health products and is taking actions to have changes brought in. Surely leave this to be done to other aspects of his organisation. In the meantime, I would like to assure you and to send a message to Tony Quinn that as long as his organisation stays in its current format, the Sunday Tribune will not stop watching it closely. Thanks.